Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about Saturn turning direct for the last time in the sign of Pisces for the next 28 years. And I just want to let you know that this moment is not going to be gentle. This is the final thinning, the final release, and the final dissolving of everything that cannot cross into the next phase of our lives. And to understand what this turning point means, we have to understand Saturn, we have to understand Pisces, and we have to understand what it means when the planet of reality reaches the narrowest point of the sign of dissolution, right before igniting a new phase in the sign of Aries. And this is the last arc that began in 2023 when Saturn ingressed into the sign of Pisces. And where we stand today is going to determine where we are going in the next 2.5 years. And I will come back to talk about Saturn's ingress into Aries. And if you'd like to be notified, please press subscribe so YouTube sends you a notification about the upcoming videos. And let's just now take a deep dive to see what all of this means, that Saturn's stationing to go direct. And another thing I want to do, I want to bring this Saturn narrative in the sign of Pisces into its conclusion in this video. So we're going to look at this direct motion. We're going to look at Saturn moving forward, getting to those critical degrees and making its ingress into Aries, just to touch on it so we see where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. So when Saturn entered the sign of Pisces in 2023, it entered a sphere or an environment that's about dissolving form. It's about restoring everything back to its potentiality and not its manifested form anymore. And we have to remember that Saturn is a planet of limitations, realism, slowness, objectivity, and detachment. And it's also the planet of cold truth that talks about cause and effect. This is why Saturn's been related to karma. Pisces, on the other hand, is a field with a lot of depth. Is about incorporation, dissolving differentiation. And when it comes to our psychological realm, it has to do a lot with intuition. It's almost like grasping for the unknown, understanding the underlying patterns rather than the form itself. And if you reflect back, the moment that Saturn dipped into Pisces in 2023, the structure of our lives began to soften, meaning the identities that had become so entrenched within us, they started to thin out. Our commitments generally felt less defined. The solid things in our lives that we used to rely on became more fluid. And if we reflect back, for a lot of us, this wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet, and very gradual. It was like a tide pulling at the foundation of our lives grain by grain. Saturn works very slow. And also because Saturn's job in the sign of Pisces is not to build anything. It has to engage with the slow process of dissolving. And Saturn had no choice to do this because when a planet goes into a sign, the sign tells the planet what it can and cannot do. The water of Pisces actually weakens boundaries. It softens form. It blends differences together. Pisces is trying to restore everything back to its essence and its potentiality. That's why when Saturn moved in, the solid aspects of our lives, it started to feel like they were dissolving away. And this is why a lot of us started to feel like there was an unraveling of our routine, weakening of emotional boundaries, a loss of clarity around having a sense of direction. There was even a subtle detachment from our identities, things that used to fully define us and differentiate us from other people. There was also a dissolving of our commitments, things that hold our lives together, habits that would hold our lives together. So this transit was never about building things, it was about thinning things out. It was about revealing what in our lives does not have a solid foundation, or the foundations that we have cannot uphold our lives. So in other words, when Saturn entered, every limitation, every habit building identity, and every structure without depth began to slowly deteriorate. So what we're being left with right now is what is the potential of what we can do, and the form is very much it has already dissolved away or it's coming to its conclusion. So let's look at some of the things that Saturn has already done to understand what it's going to be doing in the next 5 degrees before it goes into Aries. Like some of the themes that could have come out of this, we might have started in 2023 feeling like we're feeling very ambitious towards certain life goals. But throughout this past couple of years, it lost its sense of urgency. Many of our relationships eroded or just drifted without a decisive ending. And what Saturn was doing in this water sign, it was showing us our weaknesses in a lot of ways. The weakness of the form that we thought is upholding our lives. Saturn was doing this slow process of dissolving the forms that upheld our lives until there was a collapse. Saturn usually reinforces the structure of something. It puts limits and boundaries on things, but it can't do that in Pisces. So it showed us where the structures of our lives actually has no depth. So it's like having a big ship in the sea and the anchor can't hold the ship. It unanchored us from our lives. And what it was essentially doing, it was eroding different facets of our life. Look at the house where Pisces is sitting in your chart, because it's talking about those themes and the people that pertain to that house. For example, we thought that those people could be our support system, or the themes of that house, it's what was upholding of our lives. And we thought based on those facets of life, we were becoming a particular kind of a person or doing something. But Saturn was showing us all the weaknesses. It started to uproot us in a way, dissolving the foundations, the people, the situations. And a lot of us felt this through a tremendous amount of fatigue, detachment, apathy, or just plain old confusion. Like we couldn't understand why nothing had a sticking point in our life. Everything was becoming undone. And I'm telling you, it was very subtle. It wasn't sudden. So it was hard to pinpoint it. So there were a lot of symptoms of dissolution. But what Saturn was just doing, dissolving the non-essentials. It took a minute for us to become conscious of this. And the station right now is very much becoming conscious of everything that was dissolved. And of course, the way that Saturn does this, it's always through evoking feelings of pain, loss, and just feelings that are so uncomfortable that they are undeniable. And I want to focus on this right now, how this moment feels. And I've talked about this in a couple of other videos about Saturn in Pisces. One in the nakshatra that Saturn's in, which is Purva Bhadrapada, and the other one just Saturn in Pisces. Both of these factors are creating a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction. That's the prominent feeling. It's a sense that something in our lives just doesn't fit anymore. It's not satisfying. And both the sign of Purva Bhadrapada and the sign of Pisces are very much focused on what is the essence of something. So we might have collected the entire world. We might have even achieved some of our goals. Now we're looking at it, we're like, dude, this did not have the meaning that I want it to have. This is not satisfying because we're still trying to understand something so much deeper. And Pisces is very prone to dissolving the appearance of things, which is the form that's attached to the essence of something. So a lot of us are facing our lives right now and we're like, this relationship doesn't have substance. Or my work, it just feels meaningless to me right now. The people that I'm interacting with. So there's something in us with this nakshatra and being in the sign of Pisces. We want to get past the surface. We want to understand the depth and the breadth of our lives and where we're standing. So this dissatisfaction right now is very much related to the friction that exists between what needs to dissolve, the dissolution, and the resistance that we have to it at this moment. For example, if you're like, I'm very much dissatisfied with this relationship, I don't want to be in it anymore. So you have the clarity of it, but the replacement of it and what it is that you should do and how you should proceed, it's not clear yet. So we could very much be still holding on to old habits, old ways of doing and being. And that hesitation has created pressure since 2023 and it's just being accentuated right now. But if we pay attention, if we reflect back, Saturn was making us feel it all along. And Saturn has been thinning out these aspects of our lives that don't have deep foundations. Since 2023, Saturn's been asking us, look around your life. What has substance? What has essence? What's actually real beneath the surface of the things you do and claim to be yourself and your life? From everything that you've done and everything you built, which parts of it can actually take you to the next phase of your life? And if you look back, you'll see a lot of signs. For example, losing enthusiasm was a huge theme. Enthusiasm for things that once upon a time used to energize you, or feeling very detached from the roles that you had taken on for maybe even a lifetime, at least the past 28 years. Roles that used to define us. There's a sense that our identities are fading away, that old identity, the way we identified with our environment, the way we made ourselves an identification cue so other people could connect with us. There's a lot of confusion there, even a sense of apathy, like not giving a damn what other people think about you at all. I mean, that's healthy to a certain point, and then it becomes a little crazy because we are these social beings who are supposed to connect with other people. But the feeling of discontent is at extreme levels right now. And for many of us, it's been months, if not a good couple of years now, that we're just standing on some liminal space, some in between place where we know that we're not the old self anymore. And we know we're not the new self either. It's just like being suspended inside dissolving. You're not the previous form and you're not sure what you're dissolving to, but that's what it feels like. Have you ever, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie Beetlejuice from back in the day, where he's in that liminal waiting room of existence where you just kind of like just sitting and waiting to see what karma has for you next. That's kind of the feeling. And I always like the narrative of retrograde planets, framing it in a way of why did this planet need to go back? Because this Saturn made it to the sign of Aries, to those beginning degrees. And it's like, nope, I have some unfinished business. I have to go back to that 25-degree mark of Pisces. But why? So I want us to go there for a second to see what we were being prepared for, why we had to retrack our steps. So back on May 24th of 2025, Saturn briefly entered Aries, and something very important became clear to us. Aries wanted to speak of new beginnings, but ignition, what's required in the sign of Aries, actually requires a defined, individuated, and a separate kind of an identity. That's the way it's able to direct itself. But Pisces had not yet finished dissolving the old forms. So that stood in the way of our clarity. So the result of that was a lot of misfiring. Like Aries brought the heat, but there was nothing solid there to catch it. It was like trying to light a match under the water. The spark couldn't hold. We couldn't ignite. We couldn't initiate. So Saturn was like, all right, this isn't going to work. I have to go back into Pisces to go through this dissolution process that I've been talking about. It had to dissolve what is still incomplete. So this return actually exposed to us during those months from May to now, why we had so many false starts, why our plans fell apart and they couldn't formulate into something solid, why our momentum just kept dying. Like we'd push, we'd even trying to create these routines to take things forward, but it would just fall flat on its face. So our attempts to move forward wasn't landing. And I would say everything was being slowed down because that's what Saturn does. We were being slowed down because we are meant to start something new, to have a new initiation and beginning. But it can't be built on the fragments of our old lives, our old habits, ways of doing, ways of self-identification. So Saturn needed to go back to loosen, soften, and dissolve certain attachments that we have. It needs to dissolve those identities and those aspects of life till they are at their conclusion and completion before it can go back into Aries. And if the dissolution is completed, we can go back to Aries with a great sense of purpose. And that's the wave that we have to ride while Saturn's debilitated in Aries. So in a way, it was a kind of a blessing. But let's talk about this moment right now when Saturn stations to go direct. And one way to look at as planet stationing, any planet, is that all of its motion, all of its symbols are being concentrated to that moment in time. There's an intensification of it. And because it's standing still, it's keep acting on the same aspect of life, on the same sphere of life. So it becomes very loud and it becomes a magnification of what that planet is doing in that sign in general. And in Pisces, the stillness of Saturn becomes a moment for true recognition of what the heck has been going on. It's like all the movement come to a sudden stop and you can have a clear vision of what has happened to you, what's actually dissolved, and what still holds shape. Like this is the moment of Saturn's transit through the sign of Pisces, that where we can all stop and see without distortion. We can see what doesn't have a rightful place in our life, what no longer fits the person that we've become, what we've outgrown, and what still remains that we can actually take it to the next cycle of our life. We're getting a sense of clarity because of the intensification. And because we're talking about Saturn stationing, again, this can feel painful and very uncomfortable. And a lot of this pain, if we pay attention to it, it's not even that we're not the person that we used to be. We're not that person. We don't have the same routines. It's because we feel stuck right now. It's like, yes, I see it, but can I get the hell out of here? But you can't. Things are not moving yet. So we're standing there and we're looking at everything that doesn't work. that in any condition induces a lot of psychological pain. So we're fully aware of it, but there's no forward movement. But we have to remember this pause is actually intentional because it's through moments of silence, through stillness, that we're able to look at something, the thingness of life, look at it, contemplate it, and understand what is the essence of this thing in itself, in existence. What is its function? Because what Saturn's saying right now, you can't take this thing as is into the sign of Aries, but it's made of something. It has a particular kind of potential that you can take the potential of this and go to Aries and do something with it. So this standstill right now is about that. And I'll put this down for now. And now let me just take you forward to the moment in Pisces right before when Saturn's going to ingress into the sign of Aries. This is important. And it's important because these final degrees of transition from water sign to fire sign are very intense, very uncomfortable. They're not gentle. They are most concentrated and demanding. So when Saturn reaches that 28-degree mark of Pisces, Saturn enters the Gandanta point or the critical degrees, that threshold where water has to give way to fire. It's that metamorphosis, the alchemy, the transfer of taking water and creating fire out of it. This is exactly why that critical degree is called a karmic knot. It's a conundrum. It's very difficult to understand how to make this transition. Like the forms in the sign of Pisces are watery. They can't go into a fire sign. That's why they need to be transmuted into potentiality, and it's the potential that can move into a fire sign like Aries. You can think of it as something that's trying to go through the eye of the needle, that narrowing. There can be no excess, no lies, no extra appearance that makes things pretty without essence and substance can pass through. We're trying to get to the truth of something. And this has been a great theme for the past couple of months with all that grand trine from Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. We're very much trying to get to the bottom of something, and this transit of Saturn is a continuity of that story. And for the past 2.5 years, Saturn in Pisces has been stripping away, getting everything to its bare essential, to the minimum, because it wants us to see what's underneath it all, wants us to see the truth. For instance, it's been stripping away our persona, as I was explaining, our identities. Anything that doesn't match who we're becoming, who we are supposed to be becoming. And who we are supposed to be becoming is based on our essence, the potential that's invested within us. And sometimes we live a whole lifetime taking on these personas, doing all these extra and excess things that's actually untrue to the essence of who we are. So we can't move forward and be a full expression of our individuality, which is the sign of Aries. We have built attachments that actually can't hold our life. We've been carrying emotional weight that's been blurring our clarity, again, of that true essence that is the self. Maybe habits that belong to the older version of ourselves. Identities that were there for our survival. Identities that were imitations of expectations, so they were not true expression of ourselves. So as Saturn gets to this 28-degree mark, our job is to actually start stripping these off. That's why this Saturn right now stationing, it feels intense, but the intensity is going to go up. The volume's going to get turned up a little bit more. The process is going to start accelerating. And it's doing that because we're getting close to that eye of the needle we can't go through with all the excess. So in this way, Saturn's actually helping us dissolve what no longer fits. Saturn's demanding of us to be the real self. And for those of us who have been allowing this dissolving process to take place, since its ingress into the sign of Pisces, and especially now, this passage through the eye of the needle will actually feel like a release. It's like shedding our old skin. It's about emerging lighter. It's about stepping into a space where you can finally breathe. So that means if you've already allowed the essence to come forth, if you understand the potential invested within, the narrowing is going to feel like just slipping through. You know when you're putting a thread through the eye of the needle? You're just like, this doesn't go on, and then suddenly it just slips through and there's a sense of relief. Okay, it's there. But for those of us who resisted this process, for those who have replaced one illusion with another, replaced one habit with another. For those people who insisted on holding on to the appearance of things because they didn't want to confront the essence. This passage is going to feel like we're suffocating. And it's not because you're being punished. It's because you're trying to carry so much excess to a place that doesn't want to accommodate it. The conundrum of Saturn here at that Gandanta point, at that critical degree, is about understanding what simplicity means, the necessity and the beauty of simplicity, minimalism, honesty. Saturn here will not accommodate performances anymore. No excess of identity, no more of the old narratives of how it's just hyping you up or how it's actually taking you away from the truth of what you've experienced and what you've become. Saturn saying at that 28, 29 degree mark, only what is real will make it into Aries. So we have to understand this station right now to that 29 degree mark has a lot to do with this process of releasing and letting go. There is something in existence right now that wants a new beginning, but it cannot ignite from the useless things of the past. They need to find their context. If there's a shelf of life, they need to be on the right shelf. We can't carry everything forward because it's going to weigh us down. Think about the speed of Aries. A fire sign, Mars a sign. It's the fastest sign. You can't carry ton of weight on your back and expect to do a sprint there, especially with Saturn also going there. And when Saturn reaches those first degrees of Aries, 0 to 1 degree, the difference will be unmistakable. Those of us who enter light, willing, we will not be screaming. But those of us who want to carry the past with them, things that do not belong in the future, they are really going to feel uncomfortable. The discontent will go to utter feeling of discomfort. Those who shed the excess will ignite naturally without trying. And the next 2 years will feel very much aligned to your sense of purpose, what it is that you're intending to do. And in the sign of Aries, Saturn's going to build structure around what is essential. And the fire of Aries will help us dedicate ourselves to the hard work that's ahead. And I'm keep emphasizing this, and I've raised my voice a little bit because I want us to understand that Saturn's debilitated in the sign of Aries. This is not the condition we want to have for another 2.5 years because we're going to feel it personally and intensely. We don't want to spend the next 2.5 years having the fires of Aries burning the excess. And with Saturn there, that is going to be slowing us down. A Saturn that is by default going to start false ignitions. Try, retry, work harder. That's going to become the theme. Now, if you have all the excess to burn on top of that, this feeling can feel dreadful for 2.5 years in Aries. We want the fire that's going to be left in the sign of Aries to help us work through things, to move with purpose, to direct our actions. We don't want to take that fire and burn off the excess of the past. But even now, I mean, there might be some of us who are like, oh my God, I'm still lingering and holding on to the past stuff. There's time. We're at 25 degrees. We have till February. Slow down. Look around. Sometimes all that means is for us to be very honest with ourselves. Even if we can't take an action towards it right now, we can set ourselves on that trajectory. This is very important. And if you're willing to let go of the things that actually harm you in your life, even at the end of this transit, as hard as it may be, Pisces will take it. Pisces will take it from you and dissolve it for you. And Saturn will permit the passage through that narrowing with greater ease. So to bring all of this together, Saturn turning direct in the sign of Pisces is marking the final dissolution before our next beginning, is the last thinning of our old selves. It's loosening the remaining knots. It's the moment where the non-essentials of our lives have to fall away. This is a moment where the essence of our life, things that have true meaning, things that are part of the foundation and roots of our lives. And remember, Jupiter, where Saturn is in the sign of Jupiter, Jupiter in the sign of Cancer right now, is trying to get to the roots of our emotional configuration of our internal worlds. And Saturn here wants essence in the nakshatra of Purva Bhadrapada and in Pisces. The point right now is to understand this and to understand it without distortion. And if you found the content of this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to know how this 2.5 years unfolded for you and how you're actually feeling this shift, how you're approaching Aries. Because I want us to have this dialogue when we get into the sign of Aries too. Like, what is the continuity of these narratives? A lot of times we treat these transits as just segments, but they're telling a story. We human beings live in a story. So it's very important to understand these. And I'd love it if you guys shared with me. And we're reading each other's stuff too, I've noticed. So with each other as well. And if you want a reading of this transit, any transit, your own birth chart, to work on the blueprint that's been designated to you, you can go to my email in the links below, description box below, for more information. And before I close again, close, I want to bring up Victor Kara's new report. As you guys know from the previous videos, he was my teacher. I've learned tremendously from this person, so I trust his work. So in this report, he ranks the signs in your charts, the most important, prominent, active signs to the least, not only in your birth chart, but also in the divisional charts that you have. So I encourage you guys to check out this report. I'll put the link to the report in the description box below. Also, if you guys are interested to get a deep understanding of astrology, also check him out on his channel, incredible teacher, and that is youtube.com/victorcar.com. And I'll leave you with this. May this final passage of Saturn through the sign of Pisces reveal what has completed its role in your life. May it clear what cannot make the crossing with you. May it bring you back to the essence that has been waiting beneath every dissolution since 2023. And may you step into Aries, carrying only what is truly yours to ignite. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.